Welcome to the Liberace Mansion.
Welcome to Under the Vegas Sun, looking at the people, the events, and the news surrounding Las Vegas and the entire Vegas Valley. Hello, I'm Steve Schorr. We are live from the Liberace Mansion. The world around us today is changing. Some of those changes are dramatic. It impacts people, their businesses, employees, and everything in between. What is really taking place, and how are the impacts impacting all of us? On our very special program today, you'll meet two men that are dealing with it on a daily basis. The world is changing. How much is it? We'll find out in just a couple of seconds. Stay with us. We'll be right back. It doesn't matter where you came from, doesn't matter what your town was. Probably what it was when you were young is not what it was today. Things change. Las Vegas changes. This is a town that is ever changing. New things happening, things being deployed that weren't there before. How have the changes impacting what this town is all about? Our very special guests today are two gentlemen who see it on a regular basis. They're very much involved in the changes and what takes place. Our very special guest, Tyler Morgan and Mark Fierro. Gentlemen, welcome to our program.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, Mark, you've been here almost 40 years.
Yep.
Tyler, you've been here from Miami.
Yeah.
A number of years now.
About 6 years now.
So you've seen the new changes. Mark, you've seen changes in this town from many, many years, now almost 4 decades. Let's start with you. Are you surprised at what Las Vegas is today and what it has become?
Absolutely. And early on in my life, my career started, we were together at Channel 8 News. At that time, we were so focused on the mob influence here, how deeply they were in every part of business, all the corners of the Strip. And what you never thought is what would happen once they moved out. And immediately, if you notice, when the FBI came in and moved those guys out, that's when all of a sudden there was public money available to Steve Wynn. That's when the Mirage happened. That's when there was a giant building boom in the MGM and across the street, and everything really started to take off. And it was because of that kind of confluence of interest to push those guys out. That was the biggest change I never could have imagined. We never even really had a bank here until then. B of A, we take it for granted. They're just ubiquitous.
No, Valley Bank was the bank.
Valley Bank was the bank.
Valley Bank was the town that was the bank in this town that had it not been for Valley Bank, a lot of the early establishments of the modern era of casinos would never have taken place.
Never would have happened. And it just exploded after that. It was the changes that happened at that juncture were just amazing. The jobs that were created, the quality of life, the changes that went along with that, never could have imagined.
Tyler, you were born in Miami, raised in Miami.
Yes.
Miami, in its own small way, is a microcosm of what Las Vegas is. It's not what it was when you were a child. It's changed dramatically over time. I don't know if anybody could have realized what Miami would become and has become over time. Is it because of the economy or is it because of the people?
I think Miami changes because of the people mostly. So Miami, sort of like Las Vegas, is a city that you're going to go to, and it's unlike any other place in the world, for that matter. You could be in Miami and not even feel like you're in the United States. I mean, you can feel like you're in South America, Central America, the Caribbean. The people are just really lively, similar to Las Vegas, where everyone's very social, friendly. You could go into a bar by yourself in Las Vegas and walk out with 3 new friends, and people that you're gonna, new golf buddies, new people to go hang out, have drinks with. And Miami's kind of the same way, but Miami brings that aspect with just vast variety of culture along with it. So you have the Latin influence and the European influence. So it's really neat in that way, and the people really drive the city.
The part where we overlap is with Miami is the Fontainebleau, and that was the vision. That's where Steve Wynn, as a kid, saw the Fontainebleau and knew that hotels could be much, much grander and much, much larger. And the commitment to service that you see in Miami, we didn't just make that up between what the level of service in New York City and Miami. That's what drove that excellence, the level of excellence
Well,
that
and
exists
also,
in
I
Las
think
Vegas.
the sports books in Las Vegas started with operations out of the Fontainebleau in Miami.
Exactly.
So there is a link between the two cities.
And it's a strong link that people I don't think they realize most of the time. You mentioned something, Mark, and you and I we're part of media in this town for a long time. You're in the communications industry. Tyler, you're in the legal industry. There were a lot of people in this town that said when the mob left, this town would die. It would never become, at the same time, you had the advent of Atlantic City becoming what it was. A lot of people said Las Vegas is dead. It will never be the big thing that it was before. And then all of a sudden you had places like the Mirage and like Bellagio, and all of those things that occurred. And now you've got Resorts World Las Vegas that will become the largest hotel anywhere in the world. You've got major sports here in town. It's not just because the mob left and corporations came in. My personal belief, and I'm curious for both of you, I think it was a mindset change of what Las Vegas could become.
I think when the mob left, it was as if a giant burden had been lifted off of the city's shoulders. You have to remember, there was a time in this city's history when the federal law enforcement would not speak with the Metropolitan Police Department.
Never.
Because they had infiltrated the intelligence division. This is way inside baseball, but when you get those kinds of headlines, it's not necessarily the best thing in the world for business, and it's definitely not the kind of place that you're going to get the global investment community to take a closer look at. And I think what happened is, there is this old saying among the old timers in Las Vegas, the city was much better when the mob ran. Well, evidently they weren't related to Tony Albanese. They found the guy's head and they didn't find the rest of his body. I knew of cocktail waitresses who had their houses broken into, who had diamonds stolen, and Lord knows how they got them, but would never report that to police because they didn't want to end up dead. That's what Las Vegas used to be, and when you removed that burden from the shoulders of the city, that's when we were allowed to become what we could have been, and then Bill Bennett's vision took flight, and Kirk Kerkorian, who had managed to stay out of it, stay above it, built the most wonderful hotels, but then his dream just exploded with the MGM and the other properties.
Exploded.
Absolutely.
His dream literally exploded.
He had access to all the money that he needed, and Kirk Kerkorian was the world's firmest believer in other people's money, to his credit.
And when the MGM burnt, when that fire occurred, there were a lot of people that said, Kerkorian's done.
That's it.
Over. And as the gentleman that he was, it was really just the beginning of what he saw for Las Vegas to be.
The thing about Kirk Kerkorian, and this is a lesson in public relations as much as it is anything else, in that Kirk Kerkorian had established a vast reservoir of goodwill, not only in the world's banking communities, but the way people here felt about him and trusted him, the way elected officials trusted him. It wasn't a matter of payoffs, it's that you knew he was going to do the right thing. Look at the way he treated his people.
He was always Mr. Kerkorian. He was never Kirk. He was always Mr. Kerkorian. I think it's because of that respect that the community had for him.
I have a great story about Kirk Kerkorian because we'll lose it otherwise, and it's this. So I know the guy who served as a body man to him, security body man, and was in a very high position in security and surveillance at MGM Properties. So he had just taken over the casino from Steve Wynn, took over the Bellagio, and as unassuming a guy as this guy is, he drives up in this Chrysler station wagon, what a K-car thing, piece of, when it was built, it was no great deal. Pulls up and goes to the valet, very obsequious. Do you mind if we leave this up front? I'm only going to be a minute. Well, no, sir, you can't leave this. This is the Bellagio. You can't leave that. He said, okay. Could have pulled rank and said, you're fired. Okay, and instead walks inside, so he's not embarrassing the guy. Takes 10 steps ahead of his body guy, calls over and says, please, just go ahead and call over and tell the guy to bring my car back up again. You don't even have to explain who he is. And they're lined up when he comes back up again.
Sure.
He's like, no, you all have a nice day, and hands out money and everything. Steve Wynn said he was the lowest maintenance guy in Las Vegas.
You both now are involved a lot in the legal industry of this community. It's amazing to me that during the times of Oscar Goodman, during the times of Dominic Gentile, the real mob lawyers that were around in this town, I don't know if the legal profession would have seen what is happening today. We had on the program a few weeks ago Ed Bernstein. And we talked to Ed, who does so many things in this community of Las Vegas. I talked to Ed about, in the late 70s, Ed was the one who brought about the legal right for lawyers to advertise. And it changed everything in the legal profession in this town.
It's really changed broadcasting, I'll tell you that much.
It changed broadcasting,
it changed the legal influx
profession.
of money, yep, absolutely.
Now, you're both involved. You do a blog, you have a great magazine called Vegas Legal. You do a lot of things in the legal profession that I don't know if people ever thought could happen. So I'm going to take a break for a couple of seconds. When I come back, I want to talk about this changing profession, because I think that also is a microcosm of how business has changed overall, and how people now see things different than they did years ago. So we're going to take a break, and we'll come back in just a couple of seconds. It is about the changing. It is about how things have changed. We'll come back with these two amazing gentlemen and their stories in just a moment. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Visha Calderon, an immigration attorney. Migrating to the United States legally can be tricky and costly. My firm offers fast, professional, and cost-efficient service for you and your family.
I used to spend a lot of time with lawyers in Las Vegas, people like Oscar Goodman. I used to literally chase him down the street with Tony Spilatro, the alleged mob guy that was here in Las Vegas. And I don't know if then people would have thought what would be happening in the legal community today. Our very special guest once again, Tyler Morgan, Mark Fierro. Gentlemen, welcome back. Okay, Tyler, you're a lawyer. You put together this magazine called Las Vegas Legal. The profession has changed. Yeah, I remember when Oscar first ran for office, a local newspaper did an editorial that said anybody but Oscar. And that it's because of the impression of what he was as a lawyer. Today, because of social media, because of blogs, because of things like this, the entire impression about lawyers has changed. You're a lawyer.
Yeah.
Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a great thing, actually. So, I think I came in at just the right time to see a lot of the change happen, and I like to think that the publication has sort of helped amp up some of that change in the right direction. But when I came here, my whole outlook on the entire legal profession was it's a bunch of cowboys and mobsters, and everyone's really quiet and locked into their offices, and people aren't so accessible. And then over time, it's sort of opened up, and the attorneys are now advertising. I mean, attorneys are now celebrities in and of themselves.
Without a doubt.
Billboards and their TV shows and their radio commercials. I mean, I could memorize 4 jingles just off the radio in my head that I can give off at any moment because of all the attorneys advertising. And you go places with them. I'll go to a dinner with a friend who happens to be, a high-profile advertising attorney, and we'll sit down and we're getting, star treatment because they recognize the man's face. He's everywhere. And the attorneys have sort of embraced it, and it's opened up the door to people getting to know them on a more personal level. And one of the reasons that we did the publication was to sort of put a face to the legal community and help people sort of get more of an introduction to the legal community, meet these attorneys.
But you also do an interesting thing with your magazine. You not only highlight attorneys. I mean, the headline story here is about Steve Wynn,
Yeah.
and about his issues that are ongoing. So you make the correlation between today's news, what's happening, why the legal profession is involved, what they're doing throughout it. And I believe personally, it kind of gives them a more community approach than it does a legal approach.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why we added the business and lifestyle section to the magazine, is so that it's something that more than just an attorney can relate to. So we'll try and take some of those national spotlight articles and topics and bring them into the publication, because we know whether you're an attorney or just a sophisticated businessman, you're going to find interest in wanting to read about it, and it's something that maybe isn't getting as much direct attention in other media outlets.
Okay, so Mark, you're a communications consultant, analyst, do a lot of different things. You've seen the changes that have taken place. I personally believe that the media plays a very important role in what happens. I think the advent of the TV show Bull has changed the entire perspective of people in jury trials and what takes place in jury trials that I don't think anybody, when we first came to Las Vegas about the same time, could ever believe.
You know, when I first started at KLAS, they gave me the courthouse beat, and we literally did the first televised trials since the entire cameras in the courtroom issue got shut down. I ran all of the television. I produced all the television for Oscar Goodman. In many ways, he's a microcosm for the way attorneys are viewed. That changes when I also chased him down the street. Tony, the whole crew, the whole hole in the wall gang, and that was the filter that I knew him through. And so when I was approached to produce his television, the very first thing that I did is very similar to what Tyler said, is that I went into him as a human being, and it's to paraphrase the old biblical saying, and I'll destroy it. It's basically only good fruit can come from a good tree. And so I looked at his children, and his children were all tremendously successful.
All adopted. They were all successful.
And became much larger in life had they been. And that would not have been possible had Oscar and Carolyn not given them this wonderful surrounding. You don't get that from a no-neck mob guy. That Oscar was not his clients, and that was the first thing that we had to show. I've always, from the first days covering the courts all of those years, I've always been very, very focused on the courts. It's the one place that we as a society do violence to a person's life. We take them, we put them in handcuffs, we lock them away. I did the Michael Jackson trial. I love the idea that these two combating sides come together under these strict rules and decide this endeavor to get to the truth. And Las Vegas has had some absolutely wonderful attorneys. We just lost one. John Mamet was. He's such a wonderful guy. I did the Ted Binion trial, Ted Binion's death, and I worked for Mamet and for Tom Patero, and to watch those two guys together, wonderful attorney, and you get these two guys together, and just to watch was art. It was truly art. And so that's why I've always been focused on the courts, and you get to meet so many intelligent people. One of the articles that's in this magazine, this edition, is about Dominic Gentile's huge win. He had a young man charged with open murder. Dominic gets it dealt down to a gross misdemeanor. The guy does 0 time, comes on our podcast and says, "I'm disappointed." The kid walks without a trial, just a bunch of phone calls, walks without a trial, says, "I'm disappointed," and we get to learn in this edition of Vegas Legal why he's disappointed in the system and his ideas. But it's just wonderful, and we've had a great time on the podcast.
But it brings to light to me how much your profession has changed.
Yep.
How much the profession has taken fiction and made it, what it is today. It is amazing to me. There is a point where at one time you looked at lawyers who advertised as ambulance chasers. That's what they were. They were ambulance chasers. They were I think the only individuals that got worse numbers as far as popularity were car salesmen. I honestly believe. I don't know if it's that way anymore. I don't know if it is that because of things that people now see behind the scenes that they would never have seen before.
There's so much of it that's science. Look at what focus group, that magazine goes into what focus groups do in negotiations and do in both civil and criminal cases. And you see that there's a science, that it's not just, hold your finger up to there and see which way the wind is blowing. Tens of millions of dollars are at risk. Human lives are at risk, negotiated, based on the response of a handful of people. The men and women that are practicing at the bar today, some of them in Las Vegas, I think, are among the best in the United States.
Yeah, and I think there's a stigma against attorneys from back in the day out in Las Vegas that they were just kind of winging it, and they were gamblers gamblers at night, attorneys by day, and kind of just run around with mobsters. But today, there really are some unbelievable attorneys in the city. And then with the bringing in of the UNLV Law School with Boyd, it's really amped up the competitiveness, and it really is impressive. I mean, I challenge anybody to go to a courthouse and watch some of these trials and sit in on some of these bigger name attorneys like a Gentile and watch them in trial firsthand. You'd be really impressed. I mean, there's a lot of charisma. There's a lot of passion for the field and the practice, and it's pretty impressive.
There's so many things in Las Vegas that people outside of our community, and even people inside the community, don't really know or understand. Now, Mark, you brought something up very, very interesting, and that is the science behind trials today, the science behind what takes place in a courtroom. And I believe that same science can impact the business world, can impact how things grow, what things make it, and what things don't make it. So I'm going to ask you guys to do me a favor. I'm going to ask you to stay around for a second show. I want to talk about this science. I want to talk about all of these things that are now occurring that most of us don't understand and don't know, because I think it's important to understand that when you look at what really is happening in the world today. So if you can, stay around for a second show.
Definitely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
This whole idea about science is just an amazing fact. The TV show Bull kind of opened people's eyes. But when you hear, I think, the reality of what's here, I think it's going to open your eyes even more. So I'll have some closing words in just a couple of seconds. Stay with us. We'll be right back. When you think about it, it really is amazing how much the changes have occurred in the past decade, 2 decades, and 3 decades. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? Talking about tomorrow, Las Vegas is also changing dramatically. 2 major establishments are now growing by leaps and bounds. The first one, of course, the amazing stadium for the Las Vegas Raiders. That stadium is going up faster than anybody really anticipated. The second is Resorts World Las Vegas, what will become the largest of all the hotels in Las Vegas. That too is growing by leaps and bounds. Both are scheduled to open now by the year 2020. Indeed, changes are taking place. Until the next time, be safe and enjoy life under the Vegas sun. The world of business today is ever-changing. What does it take to move that needle forward? Sometimes it's effective communication, or an extra voice to be heard, or maybe help in turning the right corner. At Consulting America, we provide all of that and more. Get an edge on the competition. Our team offers more than 100 years of business experience, all to help you. For more information, go to consultingamericanow.com or call us at 702-385-5739. Consulting America, developing innovative strategies today. Hello, I'm Steve Schorr. I've been proud to host the TV show Under the Vegas Sun. We've had mayors and entertainers and some of the true movers and shakers of Las Vegas. Well, we're growing again. We'll now be seen in 209 cities in America through our network, Walk TV, as well as in 6 foreign countries. And in Las Vegas, we'll also be seen 4 times each week on Cox Communications, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m., and now Sundays at 7 p.m. on channels 1096 and 96. I just wanted to say thank you.
This has been a presentation of VATV.